The weapon system activated because someone put party hats on the defense. Cubs, let me explain that sentence to you because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I've lost my mind, that perhaps the recycled air on station Karis finally corroded my brain tissue, or that I've been sampling the fermented drinks from the Tenthari delegation. I assure you, colleagues, I am entirely sane, which is more than I can say for the human. My name is Thexel. I've been head of security on this station for 6 cycles of maintaining order, of keeping our weapon systems operational, of ensuring that our defense cubs remained the lethal discipline pack that the Crush Empire spent decades breeding and training. I had a spotless record head. Then Jenna arrived. She came to us 3 weeks before the incident, listed in the civilian contractor manifest as an event coordinator. The station was hosting a sector-wide diplomatic function, something about trade agreements and peace accords, the sort of thing that requires someone to arrange flowers and fold napkins into decorative shapes. We needed a human because half the delegates were human-adjacent species who apparently care deeply about weather. Their drinks have little umbrellas in them. I approved her security clearance. Myself, event planner, harmless. I've made better decisions in my life. Let me back up further because you need to understand what the Cubs are. The Crasher are allies, formidable warriors, apex predators from a death world where everything has too many teeth. They're quadrupedal, covered in dense fur that can turn aside, blades with retractable claws that can shred hull plating. They're cubs. They're juveniles. They're used as living weapon systems on stations like ours, 8 of them bonded to a single commander through a process that involves blood oaths and psychic imprinting that I don't fully understand and don't want to. The cubs on Karis were bonded to Captain Zora. She'd raised them from when they were still blind and mewing, fed them by hand, slept in their den. They would die for her. They would kill for her. They had killed for her twice during pirate incursions. And the cleanup crews are still having nightmares. These were not pets. These were weapons, with fur and fangs and a pack loyalty so intense it overwrote self-preservation instincts. You didn't approach the cubs. You didn't look at the cubs too long. You definitely, and I cannot stress this enough, didn't put tiny handmade hats on the cubs. I discovered the situation on a routine patrol. It was my 3rd sweep of the day. Standard procedure, checking that all restricted areas remained restricted. The cub den was in the lower security sector, a reinforced chamber with triple locked doors and enough warning signs to make even the stupidest Enon reconsider their life choices. The doors were open. Not forced, not malfunctioning. Just open like someone had walked through with proper authorization codes. I drew my plasma sidearm and moved in, signaling kicks to cover the entrance. My junior officer had good instincts. Stayed quiet, didn't ask questions while we were potentially walking into a security breach. The den was dim, temperature controlled to match Crush home world conditions. It smelled like the carnivore pits at feeding time, which was expected. What wasn't expected was the humming. Someone was humming. A human melody, light and cheerful, completely at odds with the scent of blood and the low rumble of 8 apex predators in their prime. I rounded the corner with my weapon raised and found. Sorry. Jenna was sitting cross-legged on the Den floor surrounded by all 8 cubs. She had fabric scraps spread around her. The kind of decorative napkins from the station mess hall, and she was folding them with quick, practiced movements. The cubs were watching her with the kind of focused attention they usually reserved for incoming targets. She'd already finished 4 hats, tiny, ridiculous things perched on massive skulls held in place with elastic bands. She must have fabricated from somewhere. The cubs wearing them looked absurd. They also looked content, making a sound I'd never heard from them before, a deep, rumbling purr that vibrated through the deck plating. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level, despite every instinct screaming at me to pull her out of there before she got eaten. "You need to exit this area immediately." She looked up and smiled. Smiled like she'd been caught doing something mildly embarrassing rather than committing what amounted to military espionage with a side of suicidal stupidity. "Oh, hi, you must be Thexrel. I've seen you around." She held up another napkin. Creation, something with multiple points. That might have been meant to resemble crown. "What do you think I'm trying to match?" "The color to his fur pattern, but the lighting in here makes it hard to tell if this is more bronze or copper." I stared at her, the cub she was referring to, a male called Rendering. Unit 3 in the tactical database, weighed 400 lb and could bite through a support beam. He was currently sitting perfectly still while she adjusted the angle of a decorative hat on his head. "How are you?" "Alive right now." It wasn't the professional response. It wasn't even close, but it was the only question my brain could formulate. "They're sweethearts," Jenna said, scratching behind the ears of the nearest cub. Defense Unit 7 leaned into her touch, eyes half closed in bliss, a bit shy at first, but once they warmed up, they've been absolute angels, haven't you? Babies. The babies in question were engineered killing machines. I'd seen them tear apart armored drones during training exercises. One of them, Tactical Unit 5, was currently rolling onto his back so Jenna could rub his stomach while she worked on his hat. "The cubs are bonded to Captain Zora," I said slowly, like explaining physics to a child. "They don't accept contact from anyone else. They're trained to view unauthorized approach as a threat. They should have killed you the moment you entered their den." "Oh, that's so sad." Jenna's face crumpled with sympathy. "You mean no one's been petting them? No wonder they were so touch-starved. Look at this face." She cupped the jaws of Strike Unit 2, who was making a sound uncomfortably close to a whimper of joy. How could anyone not want to cuddle this face? That face had 56 teeth designed for maximum tissue damage. I'd read the technical specifications. I'd watched the training footage. That face was supposed to inspire terror, not receive cuddles. Kix appeared at my shoulder, took in the scene, and made a sound I'd never heard from them before, something between a choke and a whimper. "Sir," they whispered, "should I call the captain?" Yes, obviously. Yes, this was so far beyond my authority that I needed someone higher up the chain of command to handle it, but I was also trying to calculate how to extract Jenna from the den without startling the cubs into a defensive response that would end with me scraping wedding planner off the walls. "Not yet," I said. "Ma'am, I need you to stand up very slowly and walk toward me. Don't make any sudden movements." "Sure, just let me finish this one," she completed the hat she was working on, something with a small bow, and placed it carefully on Assault Unit 4, the Cub. Tilted her head, testing the weight. Then made a satisfied grunt. There now. You all match, don't you look handsome? 8 weapons of war wearing tiny, decorative hats made from messal. Napkins purred in response. Jenna stood gathering her supplies, and the Cub stood with her, all of them moving in synchronized formation, forming a protective circle around her as she walked toward the exit. They flowed like liquid death, graceful and terrifying, keeping her at the center of their formation. Ma'am, the Cubs need to stay in the den, I said, backing up despite my training, despite 6 cycles of service, telling me not to show fear. Oh, it's fine, we always go for a walk after craft time. They've been cooped up all morning. She smiled at Rendering Unit 3. Haven't you, Copper? You need your exercise. His name is Rendering Unit 3. That's horrible. He's not a unit, he's a person. I've been calling him Copper because of his coloring, and this is bronze and amber and russet. She proceeded to introduce me to each Cub by the names she'd apparently given them, names based on the variations in their fur colors, names they responded to, turning their heads when she called them, focusing on her with unwavering attention. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. The crash bonding process took months of intensive conditioning. It required specific pheromone matches and psychological compatibility testing. It definitely didn't happen because someone showed up with craft supplies and pet names. We need to get you out of this sector, I said, trying to maintain some illusion of control over the situation. This is a restricted area. You don't have clearance. I have clearance for the entire station. Event coordinator access, remember. I needed to scout all the venues for the gala. She patted Copper on the head, adjusting his hat. The Cubs are going to be part of the ceremony, aren't they? I wanted to make sure they looked presentable. The Cubs are not part of any ceremony. They're Boans, they're not decorative. Everything can be decorative with the right accessories, Jenna said with the confidence of someone who'd never seen a tactical briefing. Besides, they're going to be visible during the event. Delegates will see them on patrol. First impressions matter. We'd moved into the corridor now, the Cubs still maintaining their protective formation around Jenna. Other personnel saw us coming and pressed themselves against the walls, eyes wide. Some reached for weapons. I waved them off before someone did something stupid and got eviscerated. Return to your duties, I announced, trying to project authority while escorting a human woman and her pack of decorated murder machines through the station. Situation is under control. It was not under control. It was the opposite of under control. But I needed to get Jenna somewhere secure before Captain Zora found out that her bonded pack had transferred their loyalty to a civilian who thought military assets needed better accessorizing. We were passing through the security checkpoint near the weapons array when Tactical Unit 5, the one Jenna called Amber, brushed against the sensor panel. It was innocent, accidental, the kind of contact that shouldn't have registered as anything significant. The weapons array activated. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Blast doors slammed shut. The station's automated defense systems keyed to respond to the Cubs' presence as indicators of command authorization. interpreted the activation as a direct order. Plasma batteries emerged from concealed positions, targeting lasers painted the walls. We went into immediate lockdown. All 6,000 personnel on Karis confined to their current positions while the security systems tried to determine what threat had triggered the defense cubs. Jenna looked around at the chaos, at the flashing lights and blaring sirens, at the armed security teams taking positions behind barriers. Oops, she said, oops. 6,000 beings locked down because someone put party hats on the defense cubs. And the human's response was, oops. I was about to explain exactly how much trouble she was in, how many regulations she'd violated, how this would probably end with both of us facing a military tribunal. I was about to do my job and restore order to this increasingly insane situation. Then Captain Zora arrived. She came through the security door at full sprint, her command staff behind her, clearly expecting an invasion or a catastrophic systems failure. She saw the cubs first, saw them clustered in defensive formation, and relief flooded her features. Then she saw who they were protecting. Rendering Unit 1 attend, she commanded, using the voice that could freeze a charging battalion. The cub, the one Jenna called Bronze, the largest and most dominant of the pack, glanced at the captain. Then he looked back at Jenna and stayed exactly where he was. Zithora's expression went through several rapid changes: confusion, disbelief, understanding, horror. Attend, she repeated louder with the full weight of command authority and 6 years of bonded pack leadership. All 8 cubs ignored her. They pressed closer to Jenna, who was obliviously checking whether their hats had gotten a skew during the commotion. The bonding marks, the bioluminescent patterns along the cubs' throats that indicated pack hierarchy and loyalty, began to glow. They always glowed in the presence of their bonded commander. I'd seen them light up for Captain Zithora countless times. They were glowing for Jenna. Captain Zithora stared at the human who'd somehow stolen her pack, the human who was adjusting tiny decorative hats on apex predators while station security scrambled to understand why the weapon systems had activated. What? Zithora said in a voice that could have frozen methane have you done to my cubs? Jenna looked up, saw the captain for the first time, and smiled with genuine delight. Oh, you must be their mom. I'm Jenna. I've been meaning to thank you. You've raised them so well. They have the best manners. Captain Zithora's face did something I'd never seen before. Her skin went through about 6 different shades, settling on a color that suggested imminent violence or a stroke, possibly both. My cubs, she said with the careful enunciation of someone trying very hard not to scream, are military assets, not pets. Explain how you accessed a restricted area and compromised my pack bond. Jenna tilted her head, genuinely confused. I didn't compromise anything. I just visited during my lunch breaks. They seemed lonely. They're trained predators. They don't get lonely. Everyone gets lonely, Jenna said like this was obvious. Bronze, the enormous cub at her side, made a rumbling sound of agreement. I brought them treats from the commissary, those little meat pastries. They loved those. I watched Zithora's carefully constructed military composure crack in real time. You've been feeding them just snacks, and I learned their schedules, figured out When they had free time, we'd hang out. I'd work on my planning tablets while they napped. It was nice, relaxing. Relaxing, Zora repeated, her voice flat. You found spending unsupervised time with weapons relaxing? Well, they're not just weapons, they're people. Look at Copper here. She scratched behind his ears. The cub leaned into her touch, eyes half closed. He's curious about everything, and Amber's shy but so sweet once you get to know her, and Bronze is basically their big brother, always making sure everyone's okay. Zethora tried again. She moved closer, using the specific approach pattern that should trigger pack recognition. The cubs shifted, placing themselves between her and Jenna, not aggressively, just definitively. This is impossible, Zethora said. Bonding process takes months. It requires genetic compatibility and pheromone synchronization. You can't just steal a pack with snacks and attention. I didn't steal anyone. They chose to spend time with me. That's how relationships work. I'd called Dr. Vornik 5 minutes into the standoff. He arrived looking harried, carrying scanning equipment and muttering about pack psychology. He took one look at the scene and his eyes went wide. The bonding marks are fully activated, he said, pointing his scanner at the cubs. But the signature is wrong. It's not Crash, it's human. I can see that, Zora snapped. Fix it. Vornik looked uncertain. Captain, I'm not sure we can fix it. The cubs have fully rebonded. Attempting to force a separation could damage their psychological stability. They might become aggressive or withdraw entirely. They're already aggressive. Their weapons. They're currently very calm, actually. Vorik adjusted his scanner settings. I've never seen cubs this relaxed around anyone except their primary bond. This human seems to have triggered every pack acceptance protocol simultaneously. Jenna was now sitting on the floor, letting the cubs pile around her. Russet had his massive head in her lap. She was braiding small sections of his fur, humming that same cheerful melody from earlier. Can you at least try to command them, Captain? Vornik asked. Zethora's jaw tightened. Rendering unit formation Alpha. Nothing. The cubs didn't even twitch. Defense pattern Beta. Bronze yawned. Emergency protocol Omega. Copper sneezed. I've served with Captain Zora for 3 cycles. I'd seen her face down hostile boarding parties without flinching. I'd watched her make decisions that saved hundreds of lives. I'd never seen her look helpless before. How? She asked, directing the question at Vornik but staring at Jenna. How did this happen? Best hypothesis. She approached them without fear or dominance. Displays crush psychology is built on hierarchy, but it also recognizes pack bonds formed through care and consistency. She essentially courted them. In 2 weeks, she spent multiple hours daily. Their presence provided food, learned their individual preferences, gave them positive attention without demanding submission. Vorik consulted his tablet. It's actually textbook pack integration. Just usually takes months, not weeks. I hate this, Zethora said. I hate everything about this situation. The alarms were still blaring. We were still in lockdown, and now my communicator was lighting up with incoming transmissions marked priority urgent. I checked the display and felt my secondary stomach drop. Captain, I said quietly, we have a hostile ship on approach vector ETA 20 minutes. Zethora closed her eyes briefly. Of course we do. Because this day needed to get worse. She looked at Jenna. The Cubs are our primary defense system. I need them. Operational. They are operational, Jenna said, looking up from her braiding. They're just resting right now. There's a warship coming to kill us. Oh. Well, why didn't you say so? Jenna stood, brushing fur off her clothes. She looked at the Cubs. Okay, team, sounds like we have work to do. You guys ready? All 8 Cubs rose in perfect synchronization, forming combat positions around her like they'd done it 1,000 times. Good boys, Jenna said. Let's go protect the party. Let me tell you about the moment I realized our entire military doctrine was written by idiots. We were in the command center watching the hostile ship close the distance on our tactical display. Ravager-class destroyer, heavily armed, broadcasting demands for our immediate surrender. Standard pirate intimidation, except these pirates had actual firepower to back up their threats. Captain Zethora was at her station, pulling up defense protocols and weapon configurations. I was coordinating security teams, preparing for possible boarding action. The Cubs were supposed to be deploying to their defensive positions, integrating with our targeting systems, becoming the lethal pack they'd been trained to be. Instead, they were sitting in a circle around Jenna while she checked their hats. Copper, your bow is crooked. Hold still. She adjusted the decoration with the focus of someone arranging flowers, not preparing for combat. They're much better. We don't have time for this, Zethora said, her voice tight with stress. The Cubs need to be in position. They are in position, Jenna replied. They're right here with me. Their combat positions in the weapons bay where they can interface with the defense grid. Can't we do that from here? I don't want them stressed out before they've even had lunch. I made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cry for help. Even I wasn't sure. Ma'am, the hostile ship is arming weapons. This is a combat situation. Stress is inevitable. Not if we handle it right. Jenna looked at the tactical display, like it was showing weather patterns instead of incoming death, so we need the Cubs to help defend the station. That's the situation. Yes, Zethora said through clenched teeth. That is exactly the situation, which is why I need them responding to commands. Military commands from their commanding officer. But I'm not military. I know you're not military. The captain took a breath, visibly forcing herself to calm down. That's the problem. The Cubs are bonded to a civilian who doesn't understand combat protocols. We need them following proper tactical procedures. Jenna considered this, her head tilted, bronze pressed against her side, and she absently scratched his neck. What kind of procedures? Zetha pulled up a hollow screen, displaying the standard deployment pattern. They moved to Weapons Bay Delta where they interface with the targeting computers. Their pack coordination allows for distributed threat assessment across multiple vectors simultaneously. They process incoming fire patterns and direct our countermeasures faster than any AI. That sounds complicated. It's their job. Okay, but have you tried asking them nicely instead of ordering them around? The silence in the command center was absolute. Every officer, every technician, every person within earshot stopped what they were doing to stare at Jenna. Asking them, Zora repeated slowly. Nicely. They're teenagers basically, right, Doctor? Vornik said they're in their juvenile Phase, I used to plan birthday parties. For my nephew and his friends, trust me. Teenagers respond way better to respect than commands. Vornik, who'd been monitoring the Cubs' stress levels from his station, actually looked up with interest. That's not entirely inaccurate, Juvenile. Crash do show increased cooperative behavior when given agency in decision rather than pure hierarchical orders. This is a military vessel, not a birthday party, Zethora said. Same principles though. People want to feel valued. Jenna turned to the Cubs, all 8 of them watching her with unwavering attention. Hey guys, so we have a situation. There's a ship out there that wants to hurt our friends on this station. I know you're trained to help protect everyone. I know you're really good at it. Would you be willing to help us out? Bronze tilted his massive head. Considering, then he made a low rumbling sound echoed by the rest of the pack. I'll take that as a yes, Jenna said. She looked at ZTH Mara. Where do they need to go? The captain stared for another moment, then seemed to give up on the concept of military order entirely. Weapons Bay Delta, through that corridor. Down 2 levels, 3rd door on the left. Got it, come on team, let's go to the Weapons Bay. Jenna started walking. All 8 Cubs fell into formation around her, moving with the fluid precision of their training. Oh, and you all did such a good job staying calm. After we handle this, I promise we'll have a celebration. Maybe I can find some of those meat pastries you like. They left the command center, deadly predators following an event planner like she was leading them to a garden party instead of combat. Did that just work? I asked. I don't know, Zethora said. Nothing about this makes sense anymore. The tactical display showed the Cubs reaching Weapons Bay Delta. They moved into position at the interface stations. Without hesitation, their movements textbook perfect. The defense grid lit up as they connected, processing streams of data at speeds that made our computers look sluggish. Combat readiness at 100%. The weapons officer reported, sounding shocked. All systems nominal. Cubs are fully integrated. The hostile ship fired a warning shot across our bow. Standard intimidation tactic. Our shields absorbed it easily. Return fire, Zethora ordered. Let them know we're not surrendering. Our plasma batteries opened up controlled bursts that demonstrated capability without committing to full engagement. The pirates responded with a missile spread, 12 warheads incoming on staggered trajectories. The Cubs reacted instantly. Their coordinated analysis broke down the attack pattern, identified optimal intercept points, and directed our countermeasures with precision that would have taken our tactical computer 3 times as long to calculate. Every missile destroyed before impact. Impressive, Vorik murmured. Their response time is actually better than during standard operations. The pirates clearly hadn't expected that level of defense. They fired again. Full barrage this time, everything they had. Missiles, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds. The kind of overwhelming assault meant to crack shields through sheer volume. The Cubs handled it. Bronze coordinated the pack's analysis while Copper and Amber managed point defense. Russet handled the energy shield. Harmonics. The others distributed targeting data and trajectory calculations. They moved through the defense sequence like it was choreographed, like they'd done it 1,000 times, which they had under Captain Zora's command during training. In actual combat, they knew exactly what to do, they were just doing it for Jenna now. All incoming neutralized, the weapons. Officer reported, no damage to station. Integrity. My communicator chimed, I checked it and saw a message from Jenna in the weapons bay. The Cubs are doing great, but they're getting tired. Can we wrap this up soon? They haven't eaten since breakfast. I showed the message to Zimora. Her expression suggested she was reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. Tell her we'll wrap it up as soon as the hostile ship either retreats or explodes, the captain said, whichever comes first. The pirates tried 3 more attack runs, each one increasingly desperate. The Cubs countered every attempt with the same efficient precision. By the 4th failure, the hostile ship was down to 30% shields and clearly outmatched. They turned and ran. Smart choice, our weapons could have finished them, but we weren't in the business of pursuing fleeing vessels. Stand down to alert status, Zthora ordered. Secure from combat stations. I contacted the weapons bay. Jenna, the threat has been neutralized. The Cubs can stand down. Perfect timing. I was just telling them what a great job they did. We're heading back up. Is the commissary open? I promised them those meat pastries. They returned to the command center 15 minutes later. The Cubs looked satisfied, the way predators do after a successful hunt. Jenna was adjusting Amber's hat, which had gotten slightly askew during the combat maneuvers. That was exciting, she said cheerfully. You guys should have seen them. They were so focused and professional. I'm really proud. Zora sat at her command station, staring at the human who'd somehow turned her elite military pack into well-mannered teenagers who responded to positive reinforcement. I've been doing this wrong, the captain said quietly. 6 years, I raised them from cubs, trained them, bonded with them, and I've been doing it completely wrong. Not wrong, Jenna said gently, just different. You taught them discipline and skill. That's important. I just added snacks and emotional support. They performed better for you than they ever did for me. They performed better because they wanted to help, not because they were ordered to. That's the difference. She sat on the floor, letting Bronze curl up beside her. You gave them purpose. I just gave them choice. Vornik was recording everything, his scanner going constantly. This is unprecedented. The implications for Crash Pack psychology alone could revolutionize our understanding of bonding dynamics. My communicator lit up again. Priority alert. I checked it and felt my primary and secondary stomachs both drop simultaneously. Captain, I said, we have incoming transmission. Crash High Command. They're demanding a full briefing on the combat engagement and specifically requesting information about pack performance anomalies. Zetha closed her eyes. Of course they are, because the Cubs' performance data is automatically transmitted to home world. They saw everything. The transmission indicates a command vessel is already en route, ETA 6 hours. They're sending a ship. Jenna looked concerned for the first time. Is that bad? The Crash don't send command vessels for good news, I said. They're coming to investigate why their military Cubs are taking orders from a human civilian. They're going to want answers. What kind of answers? Zora stood, straightening her uniform. with sharp, angry movements, the kind that usually end with someone facing a tribunal and someone else becoming crushed property. They're going to want you, Jenna. They're going to want to study how you bonded with the Cubs, and when the Crash wants something, they typically don't ask politely. Bronze growled, a low sound that made the deck plates vibrate. The other Cubs responded, rising to defensive positions around Jenna. Well, Jenna said, scratching Bronze behind his ears despite the obvious tension. That's not ideal, but we have 6 hours. Right, that's plenty of time to figure something out. Figure out what? I asked. How to explain the unexplainable. How to justify the fact that you accidentally became the most valuable military asset in the sector just by being nice to some Cubs. No, Jenna said, her expression thoughtful. How to make sure the Cubs get to choose their own future, because that's what this is really about, isn't it? Whether they're weapons who follow orders or people who make decisions. She looked at Bronze, at Copper, at all 8 Cubs who'd chosen her over their trained commander, and I think they've already made their choice. The Crash command vessel arrived in exactly 6 hours, punctual, terrifying. The kind of ship that makes you reconsider your life choices just by existing in the same star system. I was in the command center when they docked, watching 3 Crash high commanders board our station with an entourage of specialists, analysts, and what I strongly suspected were enforcers, the kind who handle problems that negotiation can't solve. Captain Zethora met them at the airlock. I watched the feed from the security cameras, saw her give the full diplomatic greeting, saw the lead commander, a scarred veteran named Kix, dismiss her pleasantries with a wave of his clawed hand. Where is the human who has corrupted our Cubs? His voice carried through the comm system, deep and threatening. Where is the pack thief? Thief is a strong word, Zethora began. She has stolen the bond meant for warriors. She has compromised military assets through unauthorized contact. In Crash law, this is theft. Where is she? I checked my tablet. Jenna's location beacon showed she was in the recreation lounge on Deck 9. Because of course she was. The Crash High Command was coming to either study her like a lab specimen or execute her for crimes against the Empire, and she was in the rec lounge. When I arrived with the Crash delegation, I found her setting up tables with colored cloths and decorative centerpieces. The Cubs were with her naturally, wearing updated versions of their hats. These ones had small bells that chimed softly as they moved. Oh, hello, Jenna looked up from arranging what appeared to be napkin. Swans, you must be the visitors' captain. Zora mentioned. I'm Jenna. Welcome to Station Karis. Kix stared at her, then at the Cubs who'd moved into a protective semicircle around her the moment the Crash delegation entered, then back at her. You are the human who bonded our Cubs. I wouldn't say bonded, we're just friends. She scratched Copper behind his ears. He leaned into her touch, the bonding marks along his throat glowing bright enough to light the room. Good friends. Impossible friends. You are not Crash. You have no warrior training. You should not be able to command pack loyalty. I don't command anything, I just spend time with them. We hang out. One of the Crash specialists stepped forward, scanning equipment in hand. The bond signature is fully established. Complete pack integration. This should require months of intensive conditioning and genetic compatibility. Protocols. How long did it take you? Creed demanded. 2 weeks, maybe 3, Jenna thought. About it, I started visiting during lunch breaks when I first arrived. They seemed lonely, so I kept coming back. Cubs do not get lonely, they are weapons, tools of war, Bronze growled. It was a low warning sound that made every crash in the room tense. The other cubs echoed it, a rumbling chorus of disagreement. See, they don't like being called tools, Jenna said conversationally. They're people, they have feelings and preferences and personalities. Copper here loves those meat pastries. From the commissary, Amber is shy but incredibly sweet once she trusts you. Russet is curious about everything and asks the best questions. They do not ask questions, they follow orders. Have you tried listening to them? The silence that followed was profound. Cree stared at Jenna like she'd suggested something obscene. We do not listen to cubs, we train them. We condition them, we bond them to commanders who understand their strategic value. Right, but what if you treated them like people instead of weapons? What if you asked what they wanted? What they want is irrelevant, they exist to serve the Empire. All 8 cubs moved closer to Jenna. Their body language was clear, even to my non-Resh understanding. They'd made a choice, and it wasn't the Empire. Vornik, who'd been quietly scanning the cubs throughout this exchange, spoke up. Commander Krez, the data is fascinating. The cubs' stress hormones are significantly lower than baseline. Their cognitive function shows improved pattern recognition and decision-making speed by every measurable metric. They're healthier and more capable under this human's influence than they were under traditional bonding protocols. Healthier is irrelevant, we need obedience. You have obedience, Jenna said. You saw the combat data, right? They performed perfectly during the engagement. They just did it because they wanted to help, not because they were forced to. Kree's claws flexed, scraping against his armor plating. The human will return with us to the home world. We must understand this bonding anomaly. The cubs will be rebonded to appropriate commanders. No, Jenna said simply, you do not have a choice. Neither do they, apparently. That's the problem. She stood facing down the crush commander despite being half his size. They're not objects, they're not property, they're living beings who deserve to choose their own paths. Sentiment weakness. This is why humans should not interact with military assets. Bronze stepped forward, placing himself between Jenna and Kix. The commander's guards reached for their weapons, but Kree held up a hand to stop them. Interesting, he said. The cub defends you even against his own kind. Because I respect him, Jenna said. Because I listen when he communicates. Because I care about his well-being beyond his tactical value. And this makes you worthy of pack loyalty. This makes me his friend. Kree studied her for a long moment, then he looked at his specialist's analysis. The lead specialist checked her data. The bond is unprecedented but stable. Forcing separation would likely cause severe psychological trauma to the cubs. They might become aggressive or unresponsive. We could lose the entire pack. Unacceptable. These cubs represent years of training and genetic optimization. Creed back to Jenna, you have created a problem with no clear solution. I have a solution, Jenna said. Let them choose, ask them what they want, respect their answer. Cubs do not make strategic decisions. Why not? They make tactical decisions. During combat, they assess threats, coordinate responses, adapt to changing situations. Why can't they decide who they want to work with? Vornik was nodding enthusiastically. She raises a valid point. We grant them autonomy in combat scenarios, but not in personal development. It's logically inconsistent. Krex looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the flaw in the reasoning. He turned to Bronze instead. Cub, you were raised to serve the Empire, trained to protect Crash interests. Do you reject your purpose? Bronze made a series of sounds, low rumbles and short barks that I'd never heard him make before. Kree's expression shifted, surprise breaking through his stern demeanor. He says his purpose is protecting those he cares about. One of the specialists translated. The human cares about him as an individual, not as a weapon, not as a tool as him. That's why he follows. Sir. The others agree. Another specialist added, scanning the rest of the pack. They all report the same sentiment. They feel valued as people, not as assets. Kree was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, almost uncertain. We have been training cubs wrong for generations. Not wrong, Jenna said, echoing what she told Captain Zora. Just incomplete. You taught them skills and discipline. That's important, but you didn't teach them that they matter beyond their function, because they are tools of war. They're people who happen to be very good at war. There's a difference. Kix looked at his specialists, at Captain Zora, at me, looking for someone to tell him this was madness, that military doctrine built over centuries couldn't be overturned by a human event. Planner with craft supplies and empathy. No one said anything because we'd all seen the data. We'd all watched the cubs perform better under Jenna's guidance than they ever had under traditional command structures. What do you propose? Crane asked. Let me stay with them, keep doing what I'm doing, treat them with respect and kindness while they do their jobs, protecting the station, and maybe share what works with other cub handlers, help them understand that you can have effective warriors who also feel valued and heard. The High Command will never approve this. Then convince them. Show them the performance data. Show them that happy, respected cubs are better at their jobs than stressed, commanded ones. She smiled. I believe you call it operational efficiency. I call it basic decency. Kree looked at Bronze, at the cub who'd chosen a human over his own species. Traditions, you would truly choose her, even knowing it means defying centuries of crush culture. Bronze's response was immediate. He pressed against Jenna's side, the bonding marks blazing bright. The other cubs moved closer, forming their protective circle. The cubs have spoken, the specialist said quietly. They choose her. Kree sighed, a deep sound that seemed to carry the weight of tradition crumbling. Very well. The human will remain as primary bond, but she will report performance data to High Command monthly, and she will accept Crash observers to study her methods. I can do that, Jenna agreed, as long as the cubs are okay with it, of course. Because in this new reality we apparently live in, we ask cubs for permission. Kree shook his head. The Empire will have much to discuss. The Crash delegation left 2 hours later, still muttering about overturned doctrines and unprecedented situations. Captain Zitha looked exhausted, but Relieved, Vornik was already drafting papers on revolutionary pack psychology. I found Jenna back in the rec lounge that evening, still working on her party preparations. The Cubs were napping in a pile nearby, looking more content than I'd ever seen them. You changed Crush military doctrine. With snacks and empathy, I said, I just treated them like people. It shouldn't be revolutionary. She adjusted a centerpiece. Oh, I meant to ask, what's your opinion on these flowers? Too much purple or just enough? 6 months later, Station Karas hosted the most successful diplomatic gala in sector history, the Cubs wearing formal ceremonial hats custom-made by Jenna provided security without incident. 3 other stations had requested her consultation on Cub morale programs. Crash High Command had grudgingly admitted that treating warriors with respect improved performance outcomes, and Jenna was back to planning the station anniversary celebration, color coordinating ribbons while the most dangerous predators in the quadrant napped at her feet. I watched Copper yawn his new hat slightly askew and wondered how I'd ever thought this job was predictable. Thixel, Jenna called out, what do you think about seasonal hat rotations? I'm thinking winter themes for next quarter. The Cubs perked up, interested. Bronze made an approving sound. Seasonal themes sound perfect, I said. Because in this station the event planner outranked everyone when it came to the Cubs, and somehow that actually made sense.